Hi there, I'm Joel Furches, and in this episode of Switching Sides, I'm going to go over a little bit of the history and research related to deconversion studies. Now, fair warning, this is going to be an academic video, so please continue watching, but it's going to be intense. This is Switching Sides. In order to describe this proposal and its relevance to the contemporary field of social psychology, let me provide a bit of history. In the year 2001, atheism was a social curiosity in America. This is not to say that America was entirely religious, but rather that anti-religious sentiment, which characterizes modern atheism, comprised a rather unremarkable portion of the overall population. The event which changed this was the terrorist attacks of September 11th. At this point, atheist popularizers published books and gave lectures using these terrorist activities as an illustration of the idea that religion, in this case Islam, is a destructive force and ought to be discouraged. In the 20 years following these events, the atheist subculture in Europe and America has expanded, and atheism has become a viable social alternative to religion. The increase in secularization, meaning the movement away from religion as a social substructure, has increased in that time, with a 2019 census reporting that church attendance and religious affiliations were at an all-time low in the United States, which has historically been a significantly religious country. A concurrent phenomena has also become evident in public media in this same time period. The migration of committed Christian figures to atheism is nothing new. In the late 19th century, monk and theologian Joseph McCabe became a passionate spokesman for atheism and against religion almost overnight. In the 1940s, Charles Templeton, who was a co-evangelist working alongside the notable evangelist Billy Graham, also became an outspoken atheism in a relatively short period of time. Other notable deconverts of the past include Bart Campolo, son of evangelist Tony Campolo, as well as former minister John Loftus, Bible scholar Bart Ehrman, psychologist Michael Shermer, philosopher and theologians Robert Price and Dan Barker, and former minister Matt Dillahunty. But all of these represent relatively quiet deconversions, which later became publicized as these individuals became atheist activists. More recently, however, notable deconversions have become very public, and these accounts are aired in the media in close proximity to the deconversion events themselves, with notables such as Rachel Slick, daughter of Christian apologist Matt Slick, former minister Ryan J. Bell, Christian musicians Michael Gungor and John Steingard and Marty Sampson, author and minister Joshua Harris, and campus ministers Rhett McLaughlin and Charles Neal, all publicizing their experiences to their social media followers and media publications almost within real time of the experience itself. All of these figures have come out as deconverts in the space of the last 7 years. Consequently, the subject of religious deconversion has become very public, and is rapidly becoming one of the more studied phenomena within psychology of religion. The purpose of this presentation, then, is to provide an update on the current state of research as it relates to religious deconversion, and then to point out a gap in that research which I propose to address. So let's talk about the state of research on the subject of deconversion. Research in this area has revolved primarily around three things. The first relates to characteristics and personality artifacts one finds in deconverts. The second relates to the social context in which deconversion occurs. And the third relates to the specific drivers of deconversion. As relates to the first, the work of Heinz Straub has been informative. In Straub's 2021 paper, Leaving Religion, Deconversion, he was able to identify emotional instability, agreeableness, and openness to new experiences as personality factors shared by a majority of deconverts. In terms of personal values, Straub identified things such as hedonism, self-direction, stimulation, achievement, and power as values in deconverts, and a significant lower level of the traditionally conservative values of security, conformity, and tradition. Related to the second primary focus of deconversion, social context, Paul K. McClure, in his 2017 study, identified internet usage as a factor. McClure essentially found that the usage of internet brings the religious individual into contact with ideas outside of their religious experience. The individual then begins a process called tinkering, wherein he or she attempts to integrate these novel ideas into his or her existing worldview. Also in 2017, James Nagel came to a similar conclusion related to religious education. Nagel found that exposure to a broader range of worldviews and religious ideas made students less likely to accept exclusivism and to begin to tinker with extra-religious ideas and modes of thinking. These conclusions were expanded upon by Starr, Waldo, and Kaufman in their 2019 study titled Digital Irreligion. In this study, they found that the internet was a contributing factor in deconversion, insofar as it made available arguments against religion and a community of non-believers, making deconversion a live option for the religious person. In her 2014 article in The Humanist, Ada Fetters also suggested that religious education may be instrumental in deconversion, but not because of exposure to other worldviews, rather because of the exclusion of other worldviews. Fetters suggests that once the religiously educated individual is exposed to the broader intellectual world, the flaws within their religious education become obvious, and religious seems less tenable. This conclusion is not unlike that of Roel J. Adams in his 2009 study titled Leaving the Fold. Adam found that deconversions were far more likely to come from fundamentalist church backgrounds than from others. Adam connects this higher rate of apostasy within fundamentalism with the sort of absolute certainty fundamentalism demands, such that challenges to belief have more potency, given that the level of certainty required to maintain belief is difficult to maintain in the face of challenges. The third focus of current deconversion research is causal factors. In their 2019 paper, Digital Irreligion, Christian Deconversion in the Online Community, researchers Starr, Waldo, and Kaufman identified three realms in which deconversion occurs. The first is in the intellectual realm, which identifies various intellectual objections to religious dogmas or ideas. The second is the emotional realm, which includes objections to biblical or church teachings on emotional grounds. And the final is the social process, wherein an individual transitions away from the religious community. This is where these researchers determined that the internet was instrumental by providing a digital community to replace the religious community. Also in 2019, researchers Sergio and Valeries nearly duplicated these same conclusions. What Starr, Waldo, and Kaufman termed the intellectual, emotional, and social, Sergio and Valeries termed reason and inquiry, criticism and discontent, and personal development. In his 2014 dissertation, The Cost of Freedom, a grounded theory study of the impact of deconversion from Christianity to atheism, Dr. John Marriott had similar findings, but identified specific subcategories for each trend. For the intellectual objection, Marriott identified problems with the Bible, specifically inerrancy, morally objectionable material, and the scientific evidence for Darwinian evolution as the primary intellectual objections given. For the emotional, Marriott found objections were centered around failures within the church environment, including hurtful actions of church leaders and of fellow Christians, and the way in which congregations responded to these hurtful actions. The second he identified was disappointment with God.